when you see the reports that have come from chemical analysis that have been done, some of what we are selling around and mixing as sugar has got high contents of mercury, has got high contents of copper.
Tests that have been done so far have not proven any presence of mercury in the sugar samples that have been taken.
Right, statements there in contradiction. You have CS Matiang'i talking about mercury, poisonous levels of that being found in sugar, and CS Mohammed of industrialization saying, in the best of his knowledge, what the test it managed to conduct, there was no presence of mercury. Welcome back to Checkpoint. Time for a conversation with my guest tonight. Joining me in studio on my immediate right is Senior Counsel James Orengo. He's a CI member of Senator, I beg your pardon, as well as the leader of minority in the Senate. Kimani Ichung'wah is on my far right, and he is the member of parliament representing the people of Kikuyu. Representing the people of Lugari is with us as well. Ayub Savula in the middle. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Senator, I'll begin with you. What a week it has been, literally like a roller coaster. We hear the statement from CS Matiang'i, then you've heard what CS Mohammed had to say. And the joint statement coming out later to talk about just the handling of the sugar is what was the problem, and the storage contaminating the same. Does it surprise you?
Well, it would surprise me, but what I must say is that we have seen signs of a dysfunctional state. I mean, when you have various senior people in government giving statements that are contradictory, there's something to worry about, particularly when they're talking about imported foodstuff. But all said and done, this has been a pattern from last year, when the president met people in the law enforcement sector, including people from the independent offices. It was a series of lamentations. And we had Duale talking in Parliament last week. He should be the voice of the government in Parliament. Again, a series of lamentations. But what I want to say is that every time there is a government in place, you have a season. This thing about fighting against corruption is normally seasonal. During the first Kenyatta government, there was a season for it. During the Moi government, there was a season, Kibaki. And therefore, we need really to look at it carefully and patiently to find out whether really this talk about the fight against corruption is real and is going to be effective.
Yeah.
But for now, I think is the state weaponizing corruption as a tool of dealing with a lot of problems that the government have at the moment.
Yeah. Kimani, after those statements, then a joint statement by the two CSs following the outrage and confusion around the question of sugar, talked about confiscated sugar found to have contaminated in the result of handling and storage of the sugar. A far cry from what we'd had initially, mercury, dangerous levels in this sugar. It's a little bit confusing. So is there still mercury? Is there lead? Is there copper? Why is there an appearance of confusion, even with those that are expected to offer clarity?
I think, Sophia, one, we must appreciate as a nation that there are institutions that we have given that responsibility to test all commodities that come from outside and even those that are produced locally. And that is the Kenya Bureau of Standards. So I am more inclined as a person to believe in the institution that we have legally mandated with that responsibility. When the Ministry of Interior tells us that this sugar was tested by the government chemist, I really doubt whether it's the work of the government chemist to test commodities. And therefore, there's a lot of questions that begged for answers that were not forthcoming.
What do you think motivated CS Matiang'i in making that?
I wouldn't know, and I have no reason to doubt any of the two gentlemen, those from KEBS or CS Matiang'i. I'm also, like any other Kenyan, looking forward to hearing from them, because it's them in the executive and government. For me, as a member of parliament, I think we have made our case clear. His Excellency the President, and I do agree with Senator Orengo, that these things of fighting about corruption have become seasons that you do in every other regime. But the President did assert that this time there will be no sacred cows and it will not be business as usual. I think for us in Parliament, we have taken that responsibility seriously. We have said and taken cue from what His Excellency the President said. that there indeed shall be no sacred cows. That is why we have called for a full-blown investigation by the relevant departmental committees to inquire as to how this sugar, first of all, got here, whether or not it was contaminated, because the parliamentary committees will be able to listen to witnesses and be able to get that, and even questions that revolve around corruption holistically, because the whole business of importation of sugar, especially around the two elections, presidential elections, also raises a lot of questions. Two is the quantities that we and Savula is here, he'll tell you he knows the quantities that we need, the deficiency we have as a country in terms of demand and supply from our own factories. And we go and import sugar that's probably to cover for another 5 years. These people who are importing this sugar are not me and you, Sophia. It's not ordinary people.
Okay. You've talked about Parliament taking this seriously, and we'll hear from you, Savula, but I want us to listen to the Leader of Majority in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, because there was a back and forth in Parliament, some accusing their counterparts in the House of being part of the cartels that are bringing in the sugar. And now Parliament is investigating, and the question is whether it has that moral authority to do so in light of these revelations. But let's listen to Mr. Duale. All right, we'll be getting that better understand in just a short while. But Savula, talk to me about that. That, you know, one member of Parliament saying even those cartels are here looking at me. How serious is Parliament with this? They sound like they've been compromised, some of these members.
First of all, I'll say that the issue of sugar importation raises a lot of eyebrows when it comes at a time when we are facing an election or an electioneering process. It has always been like that. But coming to an issue where the official leader of the majority in the National Assembly, saying that some of the cartels are watching us in this parliament, we seem not to have confidence in the two committees that are going to probe the sugar importation scandal. What we'll propose, because even the public, members of the public, have no confidence because of what happened in Parliament, because Duale was being accused, and Duale said he's going to bring in the names of the importers. In fact, today he has also indicated that he's bringing the directors of those farms that are responsible for the raw sugar importation. We know very well when it brings that, the names of the companies that imported the sugar, there will be a fight back and forth among members of Parliament, and in fact in the committee, to save the faces behind the sugar importation. And these are main cartels. And the cartels, you know, they fight back using the systems. So what we need to do as a committee, the Joint Committee of Trade and Agriculture, go on with their duties and responsibilities of probing the sugar imports, we need a public inquiry. A public inquiry.
Another
public to know who are
How will it help?
Because they are not using, they are using syndicate companies, they are using directors who are not actually the real face behind the sugar imports. If you look at one company that was mentioned in Nakuru, when you investigate backwards, you see the guy behind that company is Rai, but his name is not on the official documents. So in the public inquest, you'll be asked, who is the real owner of this company? And we know very well, Kenya's sugar consumption level is, this year is 800,000 metric tons. Production this year, production last year, 2017, 2018, the sugar rotational circle is like the government circle. You're the chairman of budget committee. They produce 350,000 metric tons. Industrial sugar out of the 800 is 200,000 metric tons. The balance there is about 250 metric tons. How do you go and import 400,000 metric tons? Do you want to kill the economy of this country? Mainly the Nyanza region and the Western Kenya region.
Okay.
If you import sugar, and I was with one of our former leaders in the Senate at one of the studios, and we were arguing about the sugar importation. His argument was, if you import sugar when there's a shortage, you are cushioning a local farmer. But you see, if you import sugar, you are paying the Brazilian farmer money while you are subjecting the local farmer to suffering.
All right, let's now listen to Honorable Duale on this sugar debacle.
Madam Chair, you get 411 every 2 minutes of a wholesaler, of a retailer. The culprit is in town walking free, and we want to be told who is this guy, who is protecting him. The same guy, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, he's the biggest logger in our country, biggest logger. He's the guy who finished our forest. and he has been made, he is a member of the board of Kenya Forest Service. Ridiculous, it is ridiculous.
Aiden Duale there appearing to point an accusing finger at the name you've just mentioned, Mr. Rai, who has come out in his defense to say, yes, he imported 180,000 metric tons of sugar, but there was a total of 1 million. I'm wondering why isn't the other 820,000 metric tons being questioned and who brought it in? When you hear the leader of majority say that, and he went ahead to say some of these people are untouchable and the government needs to do something, does it worry you that you have the leader of majority calling on the government for which he is to speak?
That's what I said at the beginning, that Mr. Duale is no ordinary person. And if you can talk like that, it means that we have a deep state. And a deep state in the sense that you have two very senior cabinet secretaries giving contradictory statements. But that is not the way it's supposed to work. You know, we got these two organizations, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and I wanted just to correct Mr. Ichungwa. The Kenya Bureau of Standards has a specific role about quality and standard. But when it comes to food stuff, the government chemistry plays a very, very, very important role because they can conduct toxicology tests, which probably the Kenya Bureau of Standards cannot undertake. So you need the government to work together in synergy so that all the arms of government are working together, operating together, and on top of it, you got the Kenya Revenue Authority. But we got a bandit economy. I mean, now we are reading about a house help importing 2 million sticks of cigarettes in 40-foot containers, and that has evaded the Kenya Revenue Authority. I mean, it only happens in Kenya. And if it was some young man stealing a goat or a chicken, it'll be found within a matter of hours. What I'm saying, if you go to Nyanza and Western and look at what is happening to maize farmers, I mean sugarcane farmers, impoverished. And when the factories have collected the cane, they cannot get payment. I mean, and at the national level, the kind of money we're talking about, and the farmers are undergoing suffering, and they're not getting their money, they're not getting paid. And you talk about even the other component, which are fertilizers, again, a source of corruption and looting. We are in a situation that as a nation, I think we're on the wrong path. And the more worry is that the government is talking from both sides of the mouth, and something needs to happen. And I know that Honorable Matiang'i and his counterpart, Mr. Aden, I think they changed tack because they realized from the statement of Mr. Matiang'i that if they had to be taken literally, then it meant that somebody had deployed a weapon of mass destruction in terms of foodstuff. And they needed to kind of, limit.
Control that.
Control what they have said. But the fact of the matter is we have a huge problem. And I think more than anything else, is these are institutional problems. The law is in place, but I think you've got the wrong people in the wrong jobs, and then we have these institutional problems.
Yeah, because Kimani, the leader of majority in his position and standing, when he speaks of untouchables, when he speaks of government protecting some people, he is part of government. Other than him is Speaker, the Deputy President, and the President. So what are we saying?
I think, Sophia, and I hear what you're saying and what Senator Orengo is saying. One, if you listen to someone actually raised that issue, I think it was the Honourable Member of Parliament for Yatta who raised that question, that Duale, being leader of majority, is talking about government and people getting protection. And even the Speaker asserted that Duale also does represent the people of Garissa. And therefore, he was speaking in his capacity as Member of Parliament for Garissa. Ayub Savula here has just said that Duale was accused. And indeed, he wasn't being accused on the floor, but it has been there. Just like Mani Ichung'wa had been accused by people on social media that you are being investigated for NYS, something that was non-existent. The same thing happened to Honorable Aden Duale. He was being accused as being one of the importers of this contraband sugar. And therefore, he said, I will table evidence of who these importers were. And he did not just name this Rai. he tabled a whole list of, I think, 100 companies.
Yeah.
And all that information now is in the public domain. Anybody who wants to know which are these companies that were importing this sugar, that information is there. You can easily get it
So
from
who's the
Parliament.
untouchable?
I think he spoke about this rye being untouchable.
Why
he
is
spoke
he
about,
untouchable in your view?
He spoke about him being one of the people who had imported the largest consignment of what was said to be contraband and contaminated sugar. And he averred to the Member of Parliament, Honorable Wangwe, who had gone to pan paper mills in Webuye and actually witnessed where all this sugar had been stored. And immediately after Honorable Wangwe went there and took photographs of this sugar, lorry loads of GSU were dispatched to Webuye paper mills. And that is what the members of Parliament were asking.
He took pictures of bags that were written not for human consumption. That is not out of order. Usually sugar can be brought in that fashion. It could be
I think
for
Sylvia,
industrial.
the thing is, and that's what Honorable Ayub Savula was saying,
Right.
and I completely agree. I served in the Committee for Agriculture in the 11th Parliament with Honorable Savula. He was first our chairman before we evicted him and put in someone else. But you tell you, sugar problems in Western Kenya and Nyanza did not begin today. They did not begin this year or last year. Even in the last Parliament, there were sugar problems. This West Kenya company, Mumia's Sugar, when they appeared before, I remember a time they appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, and they told us their biggest problem was cane poaching. And who was guilty of this cane poaching?
Rye.
West Kenya, this rye. Nothing
So
was,
is he the
nothing was being
untouchable?
done.
Is he the untouchable? And if so, why? Why?
I'll tell you because I'm not from the sugar belt and I really know nothing much about sugar other than what I use, the 1.5 teaspoons I use. But from my engagement from the Committee of Agriculture in the 11th Parliament,
Yes.
from what I have heard from these members of Parliament from the sugar belt, indeed there is a problem revolving around this rye. Again, remember, Savula has just told you here
What problem?
that the deficiency in sugar is about 200,000 metric tons. One importer is getting licensed to import over 180,000 metric tons.
Okay.
The others is small quantities. And then you can see the trail of protection that comes with it when a member of Parliament
Who's
goes.
protecting him? You know, we're hearing all of these words, untouchable.
Those are the questions that now we have charged the two committees to go
investigate.
and
But you're
investigate.
saying when you were in the Agricultural Committee, these issues came up. Clearly, then nothing was done because here we are yet again.
I will tell you because I sat in that committee for 5 years. Mumia Sugar, I don't know if it was Nzoia Sugar or one other company.
You're complaining about
They
poaching.
were all complaining about cane poaching
Okay.
by West Kenya.
Savula,
And
yeah.
nothing was being done. That
So
is reality.
if Parliament had these same issues in the last Parliament, here we are again. The leader of majority is accusing this businessman and referring to him as untouchable. Then what will this new investigation do?
That's why I'm saying, when it reaches to that level, let me explain further who is Rai. Before we created this body called AFA, Kenya Sugar Board used to be an independent institution. An independent institution in the sense that it was a parastatal on its own that sanctions importation of sugar or gives license to importers to import sugar. And they give to particular applicants for sugar imports. In this sense, Rai was the vice chairman of Kenya Sugar Board before we changed it to Kenya Sugar Directorate. He had a lot of influence. Currently, Rai is the chairman of Kenya Millers Association. If you look at the Gazette notice that was released by Henry Rotich, it does not specify the amount of sugar that is supposed to be imported, the type of sugar, either is industrial sugar or raw sugar. The Gazette notice just says importation of sugar to meet the local deficit.
So how is that
That's what I'm
the
saying.
fault
The
of a
cartels-
businessman if the gatekeeping is wanting, as you're highlighting?
The cartels are controlling this sugar sector,
may-
and Rai is the main cartel.
May I think...
That's an allegation you're making. Mr. Rai,
May I think there are cartels on both sides.
Right.
They're fighting each other.
There's those fighting Rai.
Even in the courts, when it comes to the season of importation of sugar, there are always two sides of the coin. One side which did not get the privilege fighting the side which probably got a lot more in terms of sugar importation. But I think the bottom line, and there I'd agree with my colleagues, when you see somebody who becomes a man for all seasons, you know, governments come and go, but they still play a very central pivotal role, even in areas which is not of their interest. And if it is an area of their interest, they are given control. Like, where there's conflict between a logger and an owner of a paper mill. These are areas where government should normally intercede so that we can be sure that we don't have certain people who are controlling our lives
in your view,
in
could
totality.
this protection be coming, say, from the presidency? Because that's the highest office.
No, that's why I'm saying the buck has to stop with the president. Because in all totality, this Mr. Rai has been seen in those companies. But having said that, I think the source of the fight is between cartels. But the buck has to stop with the president.
Yeah. Very quickly as we go to break, because he has come out openly and said, yes, I imported 180,000 metric tons. There was 820 more tons that came. Why is everyone concerned about 180,000 when there's 820? Isn't this a smear campaign against a businessman who has come out to say, I brought the sugar and it's clean? Who are these other importers or millers that brought in the sugar that we are hearing nothing about?
Let me just give you the history of Rai. Rai has not been in the sugar industry. When Rai joined the sugar industry, the first casualty was Mumia Sugar Company that is now in the mortuary. This is what Rai did.
Allegedly.
Not allegedly. Rai bought West Kenya from a nation called Patel, Biku Patel. Mumia's was very stable. Rai bought Sukari mills in South Nyanza from the same nation, Biku Patel. He passed on. When Rai bought the two factories, he has been poaching cane from Mumia Sugar Zone and transporting it to Nyanza to crush it. He has been transporting cane from Zoya Sugar Company Zone to bring to West Kenya to crush it. Rai, the Sugar Regulation Act says that you must have an outgrower zone. West Kenya does not have an outgrower zone. Mumia Sugar, Zoya Sugar, Sony have outgrower zones.
And the people
Rai
of
is
Lugari
operating...
have elected you. You are their representative and you're lamenting. So what
I'm not
hope
lamenting,
do they
that's what I'm
have?
fighting. That's why we have to amend the laws to ensure that Rai has a zone where he can get canes. And we have to zone Rai to take farmers' cane from Malava zone. Not to poach cane from Zoya Sugar Company. Zoya Sugar Company is now closed.
All right,
as we speak now.
Yeah, we must take a break. We will be back with this conversation and also the role of the gatekeepers. The Kenya Bureau of Standards, we saw the boss arrested for questioning and charged with attempted murder. We'll talk about that and more when we return.